So now we're going to put that all into practice and add authentication to Catbook. So this is a really long workshop. We'll be taking breaks in between, but you guys got this. This is what we'll try to do today. Yeah. Okay, let's start. Everybody pull out your VS Code, git reset hard, fetch, check out, install, start, run dev, all that. I'll give everyone like 30 seconds. I'll do it on my end too. Maybe I should get the mic that. Hello? Hello? Can you guys hear me? Is this good? Okay, cool. All right. I will go on to the next step, assuming everyone has done all the stuff. Okay, so the first thing we're going to notice is that our app now has this Google login component, which we just imported from, let me check exactly which, oh wait, sorry Zoom people, let me share my screen as well. Okay. Okay, so if we go over to navbar.jsx, you'll notice that we have this Google login component, which we import from React Auth/Google. And so this component basically just, renders the this login component. And you have to pass in certain functions, handle login, on failure, and we'll be implementing the handle login function, which right now all it does is response, or all it does is like console logs the response that we get from the server. So maybe I can demo that. Y'all can see all my lovely accounts. And then if I inspect, it should be console logged. So here you can see my really, really long token. What you'll notice is that nothing actually happened because we don't have anything happening when we log in. Okay. And then furthermore, in the index.jsx file, we've imported, well, first of all, we have this like Google client ID. It's basically every time we want to use the Google authentication library, our app needs to be registered for this like client ID. And this is okay to keep in your like front end code because it's not something that like you need to keep secret, as opposed to like your MongoDB's URL. And then what you also need to do is wrap everything with this Google authentication provider, which is a context provider for that like gives all your components information about your user. Okay. Yeah, just to recap, this is basically what's happening. Your that Google login component allows your client to talk to the Google Auth server, and then we want to implement this like talking between our client and the server. And yeah, this is the link to creating your own client ID for when you're creating your app. Okay, so I already showed this, but like when I log in, nothing happens, right? Like it still says this login because we haven't done anything with it. All right, so now our first step is we want navbar to show the login button when we're logged. Like when we're logged out, then we can log in, but if we're logged in, then we can log out. Okay, how would you guys do this? Turn and talk. And I expect an answer, so you better have an answer. I'll turn around so you guys can turn and talk. All right. Does anybody have any idea on how we could do this? Yeah? Yes, but that's too complicated for now. So for now we're just going to be doing things entirely like front end. So don't have to worry about this. It's just once we click, so if you remember this code, if I go over to navbar, we just need something to happen on success. All right, does anyone have any ideas? Okay, I'm sure you guys, or sorry, yes. Yeah, exactly. We're going to create a logged in React state that keeps track of whether or not we're logged in, and then conditionally render the login button. So that's what step 0 is going to be. I'm going to give everybody like a minute or so to create a logged in React state in your navbar.jsx to keep track of whether we're logged in or not, and then change handle login so that like when I click the login button, I set the logged in state to be true. Are there any hints? Okay, I don't think there are any hints. Oh, that's the answers. All right, as always, you can hop on the queue if you need help, and a staff member can come help you. And then there's the questions doc for general questions. And as a hint, it's both of these are 1 line each. This is workshop 5. Here, let me show you the. It'll be W5-starter. And then if you guys are done, feel free to move on to the other step 0 steps. I think there should be instructions on what to do there, but. Does anyone need more time for this step? Raise your hand. Or I'm going to move on. Okay, I'm going to move on. So for step 0.1, we're going to create a state just as we always have. So const, our state is called logged in. Set logged in is equal to use state. And then our default value is going to be false because when I log on, or when I get onto Catbook, it should be false. Okay, great. That's 0.1. And then for 0.2, in my handle login button, I'm just going to set logged in to be true. All right. Okay, let's move on. So this is exactly what I typed up there. Now for step 0.3 and 0.4, we're going to add a logout button by just creating like a button tag. And then what we want to do is define a handle logout button such that when you click on the logout button, it logs out. So right now you should also, I think I don't have it in the instructions to like change the state, but you should change the state. And then also console log something like logout success. I'll give everyone like 30 seconds to do this. Maybe like a minute. You can go over to like this, you can look up to do and then 0.3 here and 0.4 for the steps. But they should all be in navbar.jsx. is so long. Has it? I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm so impatient. Okay, does anybody need more time for this step? Alright, I'm going to move on to coding it. Okay, so as I said, we're just gonna add a button component, and the button takes an onClick attribute. And for now, we're just gonna pass in handle logout, and then we'll define it later. And then for the text, we can just write logout. Okay, and then now we're going to define the handle logout function. Handle logout. And all we're going to do in this is set logged in to be false, and then we'll also console log. And this console log is more for us to, well, I guess it doesn't matter in this case, but this console log is helpful because there are multiple things that could happen when you log in with the Google login. Sometimes it could tell you that your login failed. But this will tell us what happens when the login is successful. All right, let me show this. Oh wait, I didn't show the code. Okay, any questions on the code? Make sense? Great, cool. So right now, the state of it all is that I have both buttons, and I don't want both buttons to show up at the same time. So for step 0.5, we're going to conditionally render. So if we're logged out, we're going to render the Google login component. And if we're logged in, then we're going to render the logout button. So as a hint, this is how you use the conditional operator. You'll be needing this. So I'll give everybody a minute to work on this. Does anyone need more time? Raise your hand if you're not done yet and would like more time to continue. Okay. And then if you are done, what would help is if you close your computer, like your computer screen a little bit down, so I know you guys are done. Okay, I'm gonna move on now. So we're going to just use this syntax here with this condition, question mark, x, and then y. So what I'm going to do is if we're logged in, so wait, let me think. So if we're logged in, we need to show the logout button. So let me format it like this. So I'm gonna copy and paste the logout button here. And then if we're not logged in, then we're going to show the login button. So right here. Oops. And I'm going to control save so Prettier can format it. Okay, so now hopefully I can log in. And then there's the logout button. And then when I press log out, I can log in again. Pretty cool. Okay, let me show the code on the screen so everyone can process a little bit. Okay, Now we're going to get reset hard and then check out step 1, so we're all on the same page. And then we also added, I think, some styling, but yeah. All right, so now that the users can log in, let's store data about the users that use Catbook. How would we do this? So yeah, how would we store information about users here? Does anyone have an idea? Storing info about our users. Like their Google ID, for instance. Does anyone have an answer, idea? Okay, so the answer is we're going to add a user collection into our Mongo database that keeps track of their Google ID and like basically their posts and stuff. Okay, so for step 1, we're going to make a user, like a user schema. So what you'll notice is that in this step, I think we would have so we created a new file called user.js where you can create your user model. And as a hint, you can take inspiration from what we did with the story schema. And then these are the fields we want to store, their name and their Google ID. I'll give everyone 30 seconds to do this. It's like pretty straightforward. You just copy and paste. Okay, so for this step, what you should be doing is just copying and pasting from story.js. And instead of story, we're going to create a user schema. And our fields will be, oh my gosh. Our fields will be name, which is a string, and Google ID, which is also a string. And then we're going to export user schema. Okay. And that's just step 1. Okay, when you're ready, we can get reset hard and check out step 2. So make sure you have checked out to W5-step 2, and let's talk about the changes. So first, in server.js, we added a new middleware. Or first, we imported this session, express session, which is a library that helps us keep track of our sessions that we talked about earlier. And so this code right here, this is the middleware that sets up the session. And this is calling the session from the session library. And then what we do is, if you remember, we use middleware with app.use, we populate the current user, which we can check out in auth.js. So we have this new file, auth.js, that defines the functionality that we'll be using for authentication. So let's just walk through it. So we have our Google OAuth stuff, and our main function will be this verify. Given a token, it will verify it. So yeah. So if you look at this diagram here, the verification step is just the server asking the Google Auth library whether or not the token, if the token we got is valid. And then the rest are more functions for session maintenance. So this get or create user creates a new user schema in our database, or sorry, new user document object thing with the name and Google ID auto-populated. Our login function just basically tells our says to verify what we get, and then if they don't exist, we will either get or create a new user, and then it will save the user information in, so Express populates this rec.session, and inside there's this user parameter. And so what this does when we log in is just populate that. And then the logout just like gets rid of the rec.session.user. And what we do, so instead of like having to access it with rec.session.user, we just created like a new parameter that you can access with rec.user to get all the information about the user. This would just be their name and Google ID. So like everything in our user schema. Okay, so that's auth.js. And so this is like a little graphic to show where rec.user comes in. But this is like, it's all populated in the middleware. And you can tell it's middleware because I use app.use. So every time our client logs in, we get, like, we send this API request, and the server will, like, you know, verify and then assign that session ID. And then it sends the session ID back. Okay, so yeah, this slide just basically says Express session does all the heavy lifting there. Okay, so now on to something a bit more practical. So let's say that, so right now we've implemented this, right? We have the Google Auth server. Oh wait, there's a message in there. Oh wait, no, that's me telling people. Okay, whatever. So we've implemented like the user talking to the Google Auth client with the Google login component and getting a token back. And we have with auth.login implemented the code where like the server will ask the Google Auth library, hey, is this token legit? But how does the client tell the server their token? Turn and talk and I expect an answer. You don't have to talk, you just have to give me an answer. But talking might be helpful. Okay, does anyone have any idea on how the client can tell our server the token? How do we usually ask, how do we usually have our clients communicating with the server? With API. I see you mouthing it. Yes, you send an API request. Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do is implement this post request sent through to the endpoint /API/login with the token. And then similarly, when we log out, we're going to post to /API/logout. Okay, so this is the next, this is what step 2 is. This is to do. So the first one is in api.js. We're just going to create 2 post endpoints, login and logout. And what we're going to do is, take in the Google Auth token, and then we're going to create like a user. So the Google Auth token you can access it with rec.user, and we're just going to insert their user information, their name, and their Google ID, and put that in our MongoDB. And then for logout, we don't have to do anything. I believe for logout, we will just, I think, post, or like just, I think we're going to call the logout function. Let me just double check. Yeah, I think for now, for logout, we're not going to do anything. And then in step 2.2 on the front end, 2.2, when we click login and when we click logout, we're going to call these API requests. Oh, my bad, guys. I'm lying. You're supposed to call the auth.login and auth.logout button when we hit these endpoints, because we've already given you guys the code to do that. Okay, I'll give everyone like 2 minutes maybe to work on this. And then yeah, as a hint, you can access the information about the so this is like when you log in with Google OAuth, it will, on the front end, it'll send you back this res for response, and you can get the token information with res.credential. So that's what you'll be sending over to the backend when you make the post request for login. Okay, hands up if you need more time to work on this. Okay. Is there anyone who's like just confused on what you're supposed to do and are just waiting for the next step? It's okay if it's true. Okay, I'll give you guys a bit more time to work on it then. Okay, I'm going to move on now, so follow along if you haven't done it so far. Okay, so first step is just to add the post request, and to do that we do router.post, and then my first endpoint will be login, and all we're going to do is call the auth.login function, and auth should be imported hopefully. And then for logout, I'm going to do the same thing. So yeah, if we check the login, if we check the auth file, we'll see that it does like all the functionality that we need to do. Okay, and then moving on to the next step on the front end. So when we log in, we want to, if you look over here, the parameters for /API/login is the Google Auth token. And as I mentioned, you can get that token with res.credential. So we're going to call the post request /API/login. And then to pass it in, our token is going to be gotten from res.credential. And then it's going to send us back the user document that we inserted. So we're just going to console.log that for now, just to know that we did it correctly. And yeah, if we remember, I did show that when we log in, we call get or create user, and get or create user makes a new user document and then stores that. Okay, and then for 2.2.2, we're just going to post /API/logout. And then we don't need a dot then, we don't need to pass anything in because first there's no params and then it doesn't return anything. So we don't need any of that. Okay, do we have any questions on these? Cool. All right, so don't forget to breathe. What we have right now is, before we used to be able to post, and everybody was just given the default value of anonymous user. What we want to do now is that since now we can log in, we want to show like Angeline posted something. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to also keep track of the creators of all our stories and comments. How do we do that? We're going to add a creator ID field to our stories and comments schemas. So that's what this next step is going to be. So everybody get reset hard and check out the next step. Okay, so for this step, there are many parts, but for right now, we're going to do 3.1 and 3.2. So 3.1 and 3.2 is just adding this creator ID field into our story and comment schema. So I'll give everybody like 30 seconds to do that. It should be pretty quick. Okay, I'm going to do that. You can follow along, but that's just inserting this creator underscore ID and then comma string. I'm gonna copy this and paste it in comments.js. Okay. So the next step is maybe the harder part is how do we populate these values? So what we're going to do in steps, the rest of the steps, is in api.js, whenever a user calls the post request, we want to create a new story document with, we need to add in like the creator ID. Now you can think about how you can get the user's ID with the rec.user thing that we just created. So that's going to be 3.3 and 3.4 just for comments and stories. And then the last step for this one is just deleting the myname variable and replacing all instances of myname with the user's name. give you guys a couple minutes to do that. This is in api.js. And then hopefully you can test your thing to see if it works by like posting a story and making sure that it can post and that it shows up your name. To answer that question, how does rec store all the user content? Rec.user is populated in, I believe, the auth session or section. Oh, it's populated by the express session, which is in server. I think I can look this up. Let me just double check to see if there's documentation on this. Yeah, sorry, I'm not specifically clear on what will be saved, but I think for our intents, this is in auth.js. So it just, rec.session is populated by express session, and there's like, it gives it a bunch of different fields, and then we just move it to the rec.user. Maybe Ryan knows. Ryan, have you used express? let me code up the next steps, and then we can also see exactly what's in rec.user by just sending it. Okay, so we're going to do 3.3 through 3.5. So first thing, when I post a new story, this is in api.js. Instead of filling in my name, we're going to get rec.user.name. I believe that's how you get it. And then we also need to send in or like specify the creator ID with rec.user._ID. Okay, and then so that's it for story. It's going to be a very similar procedure for comment. So we're going to replace this with rec.user.name, yes. And then creator ID, rec.user.id. And then you know what? We can check exactly what's in this with like a console.log. Rec.user. So now hopefully when I post something, failed to load. Is it because I didn't send that information over? Oh, I think I didn't. I think the next step is sending that information over. No? All right, let me time to debug. Internal server error. Where's my terminal? Let's see. Send res.credential to the backend. Did I forget to 2.2.1? Wait, why is it running? I think I need to restart my server. Let me just check. Okay, and then refresh. Should be able to sign in. And then let's try posting a story. All right, cool. So that posted, and I think to answer your question of exactly what's in, what's exactly stored in rec.user, you can see here we have the fields _ID, which I think is the ID that this is the session ID, and then this is my name, and this is my Google ID. Okay, does that answer your question? Great. Sorry if that might have been confusing. Is there any other questions on? Yeah. These fields are created by Express Session. So we get what happens is we get the Google ID from like our login with Google, and then when I post login, I will send over my Google ID which is stored in res.credential. Let me show navbar. So I'm sending over res.credential, which is what I get from Google. I'm sending it over to my API endpoint. And in api.js, actually it's technically in server.js, I have middleware that auto-populates these fields. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm sorry, the auth might be a little bit calm. Oh. A mirror thing? What's on my computer? Oh, sorry. Wait. Wait, why is it a mirroring? Oh yeah, sorry guys, I didn't realize the slides weren't pulled up. Wait, what if you unplug it and then plug it back in? I swear it works sometimes. Okay, yeah, while we're doing this, while we're fixing this, we're gonna play Type Racer. Wait, so because this is really long, I've been thinking of what to do to make it not like so painful. So I'm gonna create a racetrack, and if you guys want to join, please join through this link. And if you beat me in Type Racer, just my words per minute is around 100 to 110. I bought these Concord Market chocolates, so you can have one of these snacks if you beat me in Type Racer, okay? Cool, so we're gonna take a quick Type Racer break. Please join. If you're a fast typer, you should be able to type this easy. Sorry, yeah, maybe I'll like make it bigger. Or, yeah. Wait, what's the max? Wait, I have to join race. Okay. Wait, that's a really short quote. Wait, where's my link? Where's the link? Where'd the link go? Oh, invite people. Here's the link. Ryan, are you gonna join? Oh, you joined? Okay, I think, is anyone else still trying to join? That needs more time? Yeah, okay. Hurry up, lock in. Huh? Yeah. Wait, guys, I only have like 5 snacks, so like, yeah, top 5 scores. Wait, we'll do like top 2. Actually, staff gets no treats. I bought these for the students with my own money. It was like total like $5, okay, but like, yeah. We'll have other Type Racer ones. So maybe I'll give off 3 right now, and then the next time we do this, I'll give off 2 to anyone else who needs a second chance. Oh wait, just like come up with your computer. Okay, I'm just gonna assume you guys are done, and we're gonna start. Oh my god, dang! I'm so intimidated. Okay. Is everyone ready? We're gonna start. Okay. Start race. Oh, we have a 5-second countdown. Please stop talking. I'm getting nervous. Sorry guys, I have to do this cheating test. It makes me do this, sorry. Let me do the cheating test too, real quick. Wait, who won? She. Wait. Did anyone? Wait. Wait, how do we tell? My bad, guys. I'm sorry. Wait, I won't go on immediately after. That was just warm up. Okay, next one. Next break we do, I'll actually give off the prizes. Wait, but does anyone like claim they won? Like it told me I got like 110 or something. Okay, cool. Okay, moving on. All right. You good, bro? Okay. So everybody, we're going to get reset hard and move on to the next step. Okay, so now what we want to do is, like, you know how on social media you can like click on people's like names and you can bring them to their like profile page. That's exactly what we're going to do in the next couple of steps. Okay, so we're going to start off by using what we talked about earlier with dynamic routing. So for step 4.1, what we're going to do is instead of like hard coding, like or just doing slash profile, we're going to add this slash profile colon user ID. And basically what's going to happen is we want to do like slash profile slash, and then we put in their Google ID, and that will take us to that person's profile. So if I go over to my to-dos, step 4.1, we're just going to change the route so it accepts user ID. This is really fast, like 30 seconds. I'll give everybody some time to catch up. Okay, if you guys did this, you did it correctly. Okay. So yeah, this is what the route tree is gonna look like now. We're going to like do slash profile and then slash user ID. We haven't made like a specific page for like profile not found. This is something you can do in your own time, but that's not what we're gonna do for this one. Okay, so now in single story.jsx, we're going to make it so that like the names are clickable and they direct you exactly to people's profiles. So let's think. Where does creator underscore ID come from? How can we get it to single story? As in, where or like, how do we figure out? I forget these questions. I forget the answer to these questions. I believe this is a props question. Can you show me the next slide? It's like really far. We're in step 4. Yeah, it's a props question. Maybe people are as confused as I am, so I won't expect them to answer. Okay, so in feed.jsx, that's where we like pull all the stories data, and we pass that down to, so feed is up here, and then we pass it down to card and then single story to find where the creator ID comes from. So we need to, like when we're rendering this single story, we need to pass down this prop that we get in feed. So that's what step 4.2 is going to be. So yeah, 4.2 is here. So what we're going to do is instead of showing the creator name, we're going to change this into a link component. A link component is like so here we see down here, a link component comes with React Router. It just like is a little bit more streamlined than just like a. And we're going to link it so that it brings us to profile slash creator ID. And what we know is that as of right now, creator ID isn't one of the props that we passed down. So in step 4.3, we're going to modify feed.jsx and card.jsx to pass down this creator ID field from feed down to single story. Okay, I'm going to give everybody like a minute to work on this. Okay, I'm going to slowly start with 4.2. Slowly. So if you're still working on it, you might have time to finish. So instead of this span element, I'm going to replace it with a link element. And you'll notice that over here, link also has this like 2. And the link will be to, I don't need this. I think this is, do I think, yes, I do need this. And then I can do /profile $$ the creator dot ID. Or sorry, just the creator ID. Okay. That should be it for the link. And then we're going to go on to 4.3.1, which is just passing down the props. So we're going to have creator ID. I did name it creator ID, right? Yeah. And then it would be story object dot creator ID. And then, so that's feed passing down to card, and then card passing down to single story. So single story, and then I have creator ID is equal to props dot creator ID. There's some hints for testing, but these are the answers. And then let's see if it works. So I can already see, actually I don't need to log in, but I will log in. I can click on someone, and it will bring us to /undefined, which is bad. Oh, no, it works. So what you would want it to do is basically like, when I click on someone, and they've passed in their Google ID correctly, it should be like this weird string of like numbers and letters. And I know right now it says Shannon Wu. That's going to be the next step. Like we're going to display the name instead of Shannon Wu. But we'll see if I put something in, and you'll see that I'm linking straight to my Google ID. Cat happiness. Okay. So I think the reason why this one isn't working is I think it's because we have many like students also on putting stuff on the database, so we might get like some faulty things, but you should check your own, like post something, check your own, make sure it's working. Okay, any questions on this step? We all? Okay, so now we're going to get reset hard and check out the next step. Okay, so exactly what I pointed out earlier, who is this Shannon Wu person? It would be really nice if we can display their actual name instead. But how would we get the user.name? Does anybody have any ideas? How would we get the username, guys? Maybe I'll give you a hint. What do we know when I can click on a profile? I do know their Google ID. Does anyone have any ideas? Yes? Exactly. So first of all, we can access the Google ID with the useParams hook. And then we can look into our database and query. That's basically this question. So yeah, specifically we're going to write an API request because this is displaying on the front end. And we're just going to call like an API request to get information about this user with user.findById. Okay, so that's what step 5.1 is going to be. 5.1. We're going to implement a get endpoint for fetching user information. It'll just be called /API/user. And what it does is it queries our database for the specified user with user.findById. Okay, I'll give you guys like a minute to work on this. How much more time do people need? Are we 0, 1, 2 minutes? Good. Good. Okay, I'm going to move on, follow along. So right here, I just have the skeleton for like an API request. So like when we call a get endpoint for /user, what we're going to do is exactly like the code here, user.find by ID. And then you see here that we pass in user ID. And so we get it through rec.query because this is a get request, .user ID. And then, because remember that database queries are promises, we'll get some user object and we'll just send back that user object. Okay. This is what it is, exactly what I typed out. Questions? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So here we want to get the user of like the person's profile that we're looking for. We're not looking for our profile, we're looking for someone else's. And so we need to pass in their user ID to get their profile. That's a good question. It might be easy to mix those two up. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes. Okay, cool. The next one may look kind of beefy, but I swear it's not that hard. So, okay, this is basically everything else for just showing the page. So I'm gonna walk you through what all the steps do. So this is all in profile.jsx. The first thing is we're going to initialize a user state. The user state will just be, the user state will store the user ID of the person's profile, who we're trying to like, the person whose profile we're trying to look at. So that's 5.2. 5.3 is instead of showing Shannon Wu, we're going to look for, we're going to show their name, which let me just So the user will be, like our user state will be a user object. And if you remember our user object, which we stored in, where's my database stuff? Okay. If you remember, and then let me go back to profile, help. Where's profile.jsx? Okay, so yeah, this user state is going to store this user object, which consists of name and Google ID. And what we're going to do is we're going to display the user.name for 5.3. And then for 5.4, which is up here, so upon loading the page, we're going to make the GET request on our front end, and we're going to pass in the the user, or we're not going to pass in the user state. What we're going to do is we're going to call the GET request, if we remember. We're going to pass in user ID, the ID of the user, and in order to get that information, we're going to use params dot user ID to get that. And then once you make that call, we're going to save the user object that our MongoDB gives back to us in our user state. And then the last step, don't worry too much about this step because it's not that important, but we need to render loading if the user is undefined, or else because down here we're going to be accessing user.name, if the user isn't defined, when we first click on it and our API request is still loading, it's going to be undefined for now. And when React sees, oh, I need to find user.name, but user is undefined, this isn't a thing, then React will get mad at us. So we need a conditional rendering to show loading if user doesn't exist. But don't worry too much about step 5.5. Focus on 5.2 through 5.4 first, and getting those done. I'll give you guys a bit more time to work on this. Yeah. And then the default value for our user state will be null. But I don't think that matters as much. And then we can play type racer after this one. Okay, do people need more time? Can you show like how much more time people need? 1 minute, done. 1 minute more? Okay. I will very slowly start coding. For step 5.2, just define a use state as you have a million times before. Const user, comma, set user is use state, and our default value will be null for now. So that's step 5.2. 5.3, we are just going to display user.name. Okay, so here's where the meat of this step is, fetching the data. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the user ID from the URL with user ID is useparams with the useparams hook dot user ID. And I think I said to make sure, okay, yeah, we've imported it for you, but in the future you might have to import that yourself. Okay, so now that we have the user ID from the useparams, we can make our API requests in a use effect hook. And we're gonna make our call request slash API slash user and pass in user ID, which is this user ID that we just got. And then whatever user object we get back, we're just going to set user to the user. Okay, any questions on this? Give you guys a second to like look at it, process it. Yeah. So if you remember from earlier, the use params is how we can, it's a hook given to us by React Router that lets us look at the parameter of our URL. So this is in profile. What I hope is going to happen is, so we see the error we get right now, but it like basically just grabs this value, whatever comes after slash profile. It's a good question. Okay, cool. And then finally, for 5.5, we'll see that the moment I load, it's going to get really angry because I can't access property name user is null. Because at first it's null, and then it gets updated. So what we're going to do is we're going to conditionally render, same thing that we did earlier today. So if the user, or what we can do, I think what might be easier is if not user. So if the user is not, wait, there's too many conditionals. If the user is null, then we will display just like, I don't know, p loading. And then if the user is not null, so if, wait, okay, just, yeah, if, so this is true when the user is null. And so the second one is true when the user is not null. And then we're just going to copy and paste everything in. I think that's all. Oh no. What's it getting mad at? Unexpected token. Oh, I hate working with these. It usually gets mad at me. Oh, yeah, you're supposed to wrap everything that you have within these like parentheses in one like div. So here I just use like the empty div. And now it should be working fine. It says Angeline, and then if I reload the page, I don't know if you guys saw, but for a split second it said loading, and now it says Angeline. Coolios. This is the code. If you need to take a look at it again, that's what it looks like. Okay, so now we're going to check out the next step. So reset hard and git checkout W5 step 6. Okay. So we'll notice that like now that we've done this thing where I can look at people's profiles, what I can't do is go to profile, right? Because I don't have any URL that's just like /profile. So what we're going to do is instead of, so yeah, that's our tree. What we want to do is when I click on profile, instead of just going to /profile, I want to go to /profile /my user ID. But how does the nav bar know your user ID? Thinkies time. Maybe in other words, where is it saved in? We'll go to navbar and take a looky-loo. Does anybody have an idea? If not, that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to create a React state in navbar.jsx that keeps track of it. So as you may have noticed, as of right now, only like the session that we've stored like connected to the user keeps track of who the user is, but in order to access it directly, we'll just keep track of it with a state. Okay, another long step, but for steps, for like this whole step 6, we're going to do all of that. Okay, so in step 6.1, we're going to create a user ID with default value null, and then within this step, we're also going to like delete all mention of logged in, just because like we can just check if our like user ID is null instead. And we're going to get our user ID whenever we call post login. So I think we can check our API.js, and actually, if I recall correctly, API.js calls auth.login, so where we really should be going is auth. And so when we come in to see auth, when we log in, you'll note that we res.send the user. So right now, like our front end really isn't doing anything with the, right now it's only console.logging the user information, but instead what we want to do is update our user, store the data that we get after we log in this user ID state. Similarly, when I log out, I want to get rid of my user ID state. And then in step 6.4, we're going to use this state to link to /profile /my user ID instead of just /profile down here. So instead of /profile, we'll change it to /profile /user ID. Okay, I know that was a lot. I'll give you guys. Oh, I said I was going to play type. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. We will play type racer after this one. Brian, can you make sure I do that? Yes. Okay, I'll let you guys loose. And yeah, use the queue if you have any questions. Or you can just holler out your question, honestly. let's come back together. So, okay, I went ahead and done the first step, but that was just replacing our logged in with user ID and set user ID, and I'm putting the default state as null. Okay, so for the next one, what we're gonna do is like, after I call my post request for login, it console.logs login. Let's see if I have a history of this. Instead of going to profile. Oh my gosh. It's because, I'm sorry, it's not that serious, but we have, instead of every time, because I deleted set logged in, I need to get rid of all mentions of logged in. So we'll change this to define user ID. So set user ID to be false here, and then is there anything with logged? And then here I'm going to replace that with user ID. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the step I was in. So now every time I call, do a login, it sends all of this. But this object is, that's why our token set I is not defined, because I changed this to set user ID. Okay, we're going to try that again. So I'm going to log in. And then I'm going to get, so this is what I get from Google. This is what I get back from my server. So I want to store the user ID will be this underscore ID field. So we're going to set user, instead of this set user ID as true, which I really shouldn't have put there, I should do set user ID, and then it will be user._ID. Now, when I log out, instead of set user ID false, we're going to set it to be null. Okay, any questions there? Make sense? Cool. So that's 6.2 and 6.3. Now we're going to do 6.4, which is pretty quick. We're going to insert user ID here. Cool. Now let's see if this works. If I go to profile, it's because I didn't do it correctly the first time. But now let me log in. Post request failed. Is it this one? Console.log user ID. Oh, is my server still running? Yeah, you're right. I think my app crashed. Let's just try restarting it. You know, sometimes the solution is just to restart things. Why are there no stories? Okay, wait. Okay, the stories is working now. But now when I go on to profile, you'll note that it just says my name. Yay! And it does link to like this instead of something else. Okay, let me flash up the solution so you can take a look. Okay, any questions? Oh yes, thank you for reminding me. It's type racer time. So I hear that, well here, let me create a racetrack, and then here's the link. Huh? What, 10? There's a player limit of 10? Oh, how do I change that? Edit racetrack. Oh, that does appear to be the max. I don't know if that's how it works. And I hear Calvin wants to tell me a joke. Oh, yeah. Where's the mic? Oh, just me personally. Okay, sure. You can tell me a joke. Why can't you tell it to everyone? Well, then maybe that's not a good joke to tell then. Okay. Oh, did people join? Yeah, you know, the prerequisites for joining this racetrack is you have to be in the top 10 of people who can type this in. How many people are in the racetrack? Bro, you playing with other people. Does anybody else need time to join? Okay, I'm gonna start if no one has any objections. And hopefully I won't click off this time. Alright. Wait, let me join. Okay. Oh, it's a longer one. I gotta lock in. How do I see who wins? Bro, how does this work? Alright, who's second place with the... Well, first of all, nobody won. SMH. Secondly, I'll give the prizes to second and third place with 110 words per minute each. Oh no, it ended. I'll do honor policy. Do you want to raise your hand if that was you? Really? Staff are allowed to win. If you want your free, you can go buy your own. One more time. Okay, wait. Who got over 100? Come down and grab it. Anyone else? I don't think I can throw it. Ryan, do you think? No. They gotta choose. They gotta choose. Anyone else? No? Wow. Okay, wait. We'll play again. Wait. It keeps making me do anti-cheat. This is so annoying. I'm typing. I'm doing the... Oh my gosh, that's so annoying. Alright, we're gonna... Wait, we'll do another round, so other people can use... But monkey type doesn't have a race feature. No, but it's not fun if you're not racing. How is this excluding people? Does Nitro type have a guest feature? Wait. Okay. Maybe we'll do a couple steps and then we'll do a Nitro type and see how it goes. Okay. And then I hope to give away the rest of the candies. Wow, I'm surprised there aren't that many. Like, I would think, like, I thought someone would beat me. I don't know. Like, I don't type that fast. My flex is that my monkey type 15-second max is 150. I think I'm like 153 words per minute. But like monkey type, you can make it give you really easy words. So. Okay, while staff is being distracted, we're going to lock in. So we're going to reset hard and check out the next step. Get rid of this. Okay, so the next step is we're going to deal with one more problem. So when I log in, as you remember, we just made it so that like when we log in, our front end keeps track of our user ID. But when I refresh, my front end forgets. It's really annoying, right? Because if I like have when I'm logged in and I refresh, I stay logged in. So that's what our next step is. We're going to persist this user ID. So if you remember, like the thing with React and front end is that whenever you reload the page, it just forgets all your variables. So there's no way for us to like store our user ID permanently. What we're going to do is instead, our session is stored as part of our like middleware. And so what's going to happen is every time I refresh, I'm going to send over my cookie information to, oh, I think I just gave the answer, but I'm going to send over my cookie information to the backend and say, hey, do you remember me? And the backend's going to send back to me my session information, like my username and my Google ID, and that's what I'm going to use to populate my user ID field. Okay, so we're going to do this in the form of this get/API/who am I. Let me walk through what these steps are going to be. Okay, so first of all, we're going to just create this route in the backend. And what it's going to do is just send back rec.user if it exists. Otherwise, we send back nothing. And yeah, the parameters is nothing. The user information is just saved in the session data. And then on the front end, so on page load, we're going to call this get/API/who am I to find out who I am, and set user ID to be that. And then 7.3 is kind of a sidebar, but we're going to, so if we're not logged in and I click profile, because our default value is null, when I click profile, it'll go to /profile/null. Instead, when we're not logged in, we're just going to get rid of the profile button. So that's what step 7.3 is. Don't worry too much if you don't get to step 7.3. The main bulk of it is these two API requests. I'll give everyone 3 minutes to work on this. I need to prove for myself that JavaScript empty arrays are truthy. Oh, empty objects? Yeah. Let me check. They are truthy! Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Sorry for hating. Okay. My bad, gang. All right, so let's come together and I'll write the API route. So I started off with like the standard router.pose again. Who am I? And then rec res map here. So as we look over here, if the rec.user exists, then we return, we give them the rec.user, otherwise we give empty. So if rec.user, we send rec.user, otherwise we send the empty object. Which we just learned, the empty object is truthy. Okay. All right, any questions on this? Coolios. Okay, 7.2. So first of all, we need to call the who am I with use effect. Oh my gosh, I hate use effect. So we're going to get /API/whoami dot then. It's going to send us a user object, or it might send us nothing. But if, oh, I see. So yeah, if user.id exists, we're going to send over, we're going to set user ID to be user.id. So yeah, we can't just check for if user, because if it's just if user, it will return true always. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, and then finally for 7.3, we're going to hide the profile link if we're not logged in. So we're going to do, I think we're going to do user.id. User ID. So if this user ID exists, instead of using like the question mark and then the two ifs, because we only want to show it if it exists, we can just use the double ampersand. And then we can just paste in this component. Okay, so now let's check that it works. Oh, wait, I forgot to check. Okay, so now that I'm signed out, we see that the profile doesn't exist. And then I can sign in and sign out. And then, I mean, we can do a gut check. I can go to my profile. Coolios. These are the solutions. Any questions? Okay, we can do it at the end. All right. We are close to finishing. Okay. So, oh wait, I was supposed to demo what happens when we refresh. So when I refresh, look, I stay signed in. Isn't that great? So yeah, just to recap what's happening, whenever we refresh, our use effect gets called because that happens upon page load. And my use effect, which we just made, this one, it asks the API endpoint, who am I, and it sends back my user information if our session is still being maintained. Okay, so for the next step, so we're gonna git reset hard and check out W5 step 8. So our next step will be addressing what happens when someone's not logged in and then post. So as of right now, I believe what will happen is, I'm also going to open my console. When I submit, I get an error because, so what happens on the back end is that it expects, where's my post? it expects something called rec.user, which doesn't exist when I'm not logged in. So it throws this error, right? So what we need to do is just get rid of this posting functionality when we're not logged in. Okay, so how do we know whether or not we're logged in? Well, right now, we like post things in feed and news story. But where, well, first of all, does everybody remember where the user ID information lives? Or like what checks whether or not we're logged in? Where does that live? Shout it out. In which component does it live in? The user information. It's one of these components. It lives in the navbar component. Okay, and what we could do is we could call the get API / whoami at each of these components when we already have it in navbar. This calls the endpoint way too many times. So one solution is, well, instead of calling it in navbar and somehow accessing it in new story, a new comment, we can call it in app. Except, does anybody see any problems with this? Yes. Exactly. And how do we fix that? Context. Amazing. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep a context that is the user ID, and we're just going to consume it here. So one thing to note is that whenever our context changes, where it is defined will re-render, but that's fine because re-rendering who we are, we need to re-render a lot of things anyways when we log in and log out. It doesn't happen too often, so it's good to keep as a context. Okay. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next couple steps. 8.1, which I missed. So when I git checkout, step 8, we'll notice that we have created a new folder for context. Where's that? Right here. It's on the front end. And so 8.1 will be creating a context, and just as a reminder, this is how you create a context. So create the user context in this file for step 8.1. I'll give you guys, well, this is basically the template, so I'll give you guys 30 seconds, a minute to do that. So I will slowly type in the format. So yeah, I'll type in the format here. Okay, I'll assume people have gotten the chance to do this. So we'll call our context the user context, and our default value will be null. I don't know if I wrote that. Yeah, I wrote that. The default value is null. All right, so now we need to do a little bit of rearranging. Right now, so currently we have this, right? This is what it is. In navbar, we call who am I. We also have the handle login, handle logout function. This is everything we need to keep track of our user information. So what needs to happen is we need to pull it up into app. And so we just need to basically copy and paste this into app. And you guys can follow along as I do this step because it's not super, I don't know, necessary. So I apologize for the many to-do steps, but for 8.2.1, all we're going to do is we're going to take this big chunk, we're going to control X, or command, and then we're going to go to where it says 8.2.2 in app, and then we're going to paste it here. So now we've moved all the handle login, handle logout utility along with the user ID information into app. Okay, so that's 8.2, and then 8.3. So we're going to. Oh yeah. So because we moved the handle login and handle logout function out to app, we need to pass it back into navbar. So we're going to just pass it in as props. So handle login, and this is an app, so we can just say handle login. Handle login, handle logout is handle logout. And because now we're passing it in as props in navbar, I'm going to go to navbar, and we can't just call handle login right here. We need to do props.handle login and props.handle logout. Okay, that should be 8.3. Does anybody need any more time to follow along with what I just did? And this is what we did so far in 8.3. Okay, and then in 8.4, what we're going to do is wrap everything in a user context. So the first thing we need to do is just uncommenting this, importing our user context, and then we're going to wrap everything with user context. So you can do that with like context provider. And then for the value, we can just pass in, like technically, I guess the slides maybe were a little bit misleading. You don't need to pass in a JSON object, you can just pass in a single value. And then when you consume the context, you don't have to specify the attribute. And then let me close this. Okay, any questions on how we created a context? Coolios. Oh, let's move on. I should hurry so I don't go over time. Okay, and then for 8.5, we're going to, first of all, we have to import our user context. And also, we need to import use context from React. And then we're going to consume user ID from user context. And we can do this with the use context hook. So we'll define a variable for it. And that's how we define. And that's how we like consume it. And yeah, if you remember last time we did like attribute without the K. But this time we don't need it because we didn't pass in a JSON object. Okay, and that should be all the steps for 8.5, I think. Okay, cool. I know this was super long, but yeah, don't forget to breathe. We're almost to the end. Okay, and then now I'm going to reset hard. And, oh, whoops. Oh, no, I don't want to open ports. And then check out the next step. Okay, oh, maybe before I did that, I really should have checked that it worked, but hopefully it works where like nothing breaks. So the next step is, now that we have like moved user ID into a context for an entire app, we're going to do what we talked about earlier, which is hiding the input boxes if we're logged out. So for 9.1, we're going to also consume the user ID information from the context and only show new story if the user ID exists. And then 9.2 is a similar thing, so go ahead and do 9.2 as well. cookie. I'll start coding this one, and maybe if you're working on the comments one, just know that it's the same. Okay, so we're going to first consume the user context in feed. So I'm gonna let user ID is use context, user context. This is where the naming convention might be a little bit annoying because we use context for user I don't know, it might be annoying that they're very similar. And now we're going to conditionally render the new stories if and only if the user ID is null. So if user ID, so if user ID is true, or like it exists, we're going to render this, the new story. So now let's check that real quick. I'm not signed in, but now I can't put in common stuff. But if I sign in, I should be able to submit things. Great. Okay, and then for 9.2.1 and 2.2, it's like the same thing. Const user ID is equal to use context, user context, and then conditional rendering. So user ID, then new comment. Okay, so if I sign out, that's all hidden. And that's the code. Yay, we made it. Catbook is complete after all that work. Woo! Okay, so this last slide is just like an optional homework challenge if you're interested in doing some more React. The user model isn't very interesting. It would be nice if we could, like, whatever the cat happiness is, increment it and save it. That's like a pretty cool idea. You can see how many like cat happiness people have. But yeah, on the whole, I just want to recap like everything that we did so far. So let me pull up the slide with all the steps. Okay. So just to like go over everything we did. So if we look, I want to compare get reset hard and then check out W5 starter. So this is what we started with. All our posts are like anonymous users, and we just had this like sign in button that didn't do anything. Right. Yeah, we signed in, it didn't do anything. So what we did in the first steps is first, like when we log in and log out, we made sure that our backend saved that information using express session. And then we conditionally rendered the login logout button so we can log in and then have the server know that's like the authorization part. Or the first part is like the authentication, and then the server saving it would be like authorization for later on. Next, we modified the story and comments and how we posted stories and comments so that in the future we don't, like our name isn't anonymous user, but rather our actual name. And not only that, we made it clickable so we can go on to different people's profiles and it would like dynamically render the people's profiles and their names. After we did all of that functionality, we realized that whenever I refresh the page, my front end forgets that I'm logged in. So it'd be really nice if that didn't happen. So what we did in step 5 and onwards is saving our information in this state that keeps track of our user ID. We added an API route that asks the backend, hey, do you remember who I am from my cookie? And then the backend would be like, oh yeah, your name is this, and this is your information. So that's like steps 6 through 8. And then finally, for step 9, more of a cleanup step, we hit the input fields when we're logged out because in step 3, we changed it so that users basically have to be logged in because we're saving their Google ID whenever they make a post. We need to make sure that there's no issues there. So that's everything that we did. Okay, does anybody have any questions on the general procedure? Cool. We have, I'll do announcements once more, and then we can be done on time, so on time.